Houston area. So welcome to the show, Mr. Elliot Sherman. How are you today?
Thank you, sir. Appreciate you having me.
No problem. You're welcome. And we would like to know a little more about you first, and then we'll get into the our party, Libertarian Party. I mean, we don't see many candidates for the Libertarian Party, and also we don't get to hear more about the party itself. So we'll learn more today about yourself and your party and your ideologies and the party it stands for. So thank you very much for coming to the show, and please let us know more about you first, please.
Certainly. I grew up in Houston, Texas, and I have been working in supply chain project management for about 13 years. I got both of my undergraduate business degree and my master's in business from the University of Houston, so I have a lot of local roots here in town. With my professional career, I spend my days working on pipeline projects in the energy sector and finding ways to make things more efficient, which is something the government could certainly use here in the United States. I am involved locally with several charities. I donate regularly to a group called Homemade Hope, which helps disadvantaged youths kind of gain some necessary life skills they otherwise wouldn't have access to. I also spend a lot of my weekends volunteering at the Houston Food Bank, helping people who are, don't have access to regular nutrition, and their families be able to eat. So that's a little bit of a background on me.
Very nice. I mean, your supply chain background would have been much helpful in procuring the PPEs and the ventilators. I mean, in the beginning of the COVID pandemic. I mean, it was a good experience you have. So, and also you're running for Congress right now. I mean, and you're chosen a party, Libertarian Party, to run on their ticket. So, can you talk a little bit more about the Libertarian Party? Why Libertarian Party? And what is the Libertarian Party stands for, if you don't mind, please?
Certainly. So most people would have just assumed that if you want to run for office, you would pick either the United States Republican or Democratic parties. There are good things that they stand for in both of those parties, but ultimately there are a lot that I just disagreed with too much. I found that the Libertarian Party kind of acts as a way to take the best aspects of those other parties and combine them in a way that benefits most Americans. So, for example, the Republicans get it right when they say spend less money, the government should have less control. The Democrats get it right when they say people deserve equality and to be treated with dignity. So, really, when you combine the economic freedom with the social freedom, you get a party that is consistently for freedom, and that's really what drives people and what they deserve.
Gotcha. And Libertarian Party is when has it started, and how many congressmen it has? I think as of now it only represents one congressman in the House, if I'm not wrong. Is that right?
Correct. So the Libertarian Party was founded in 1971 and has been, the forefront leader in advancing issues like marriage equality and ending the war on drugs and ending the wars in general. Right now, we presently do have one sitting member in Congress, and we have there have been hundreds of libertarians elected to lower offices all over the country.
Gotcha. So very nice. And what is the reason you're running for the Congress? I mean, you have a Democratic Party and the Republican Party, and we also have the Green Party and now the Libertarian Party, and so you have so many people, and the chances of Green Party and the Libertarian Party is very. I'm not discouraging. I mean, the ideas are very good, and we need to come back and run for the cause whatever you have, which is good. But if you look at the statistics point of view, I mean, it takes a long way. It has a long way to go to catch up with the other two parties. So, what is your main reason to run for the Congress and on the Libertarian Party? Both the points, please.
So, one reason that I decided not to run as a Republican or as a Democrat is because each of those parties has a list of a platform of issues that they value, and they publish, and they say this is what we stand for. After reviewing, both of those parties' information, I just found that I didn't identify with those, and the principles that are important to me of treating people with respect and not having a government that controls our lives, that was only really able to be found within the Libertarian Party. So in this particular race, I decided to run for Congress because we have an incumbent who ran as someone who would be respectful of the U.S. Constitution, and almost immediately he proved that was just talk. He supports the government taking people's guns from them without even any kind of criminal conviction or charges pressed. That's just so completely wrong. And most people who are Republicans like their gun rights here in Texas. So when you have someone who's doing that, you'd think that if you like guns, you would support the Republicans. But when the Republicans don't even respect that, same issue goes for spending. He's co-sponsored bills that have resulted in trillions of dollars of deficit spending here in the U.S. And that's another thing that Republicans typically say, hey, we want to get spending under control. But when you have people doing that, then it really doesn't give voters a fair shake at getting an option. So I wanted to give people that option, let them know that if these things do matter to you more than just lip service and you want someone who's actually going to stand up and fight for these rights, you do have an option on the ballot.
Gotcha. I mean, you're talking about the Dan Crenshaw, right? I mean, he's a ex-military person, and then, if I'm not wrong, is that correct? So your main. Thank you. So what's wrong with the Republican Party? Let's go with both the parties. We'll come. What is that missing? I mean, which you're missing from the Republican Party, and you chose Libertarian. I mean, what is that core values or core points which are missing in the Republican Party?
So the Republican Party several decades ago was a lot more interested in keeping the government small, and they've coasted on that brand marketing for so long as they've just drifted away from that. When I look at the Republicans in office right now, they seem almost indistinguishable from some of the Democrats in the ways that really matter when you're talking about key votes, where how the money is being spent, waging this forever war that encourages the government to create conflict so that it keeps having an excuse to use corporate providers of who make weapons of war. We really get to a point where a lot of people, if they take political quizzes, they will turn out and it'll say you are libertarian, because the Libertarian Party represents smaller government, more freedom, more respect for individual people and their rights. So most people want that. The problem is they're stuck in this pattern of voting for a party that has promised them that and then keeps not delivering. So really what we need to do as a party, and what is important in my campaign, is helping overcome that, and breaking that cycle, so that people really realize what issues matter to them and then vote according to the issues that matter to them, rather than just voting for their favorite, color red or color blue.
Gotcha. So what is the wrong? I mean, what is it missing in the color blue? I mean, the Democratic Party. So yeah.
I should be fair to them as well. So the Democratic Party is really good at identifying problems in today's society. People like Bernie Sanders, they talk about income issues. They talk about access to health care, and all of those are really good and valid points. However, their solution to solving these problems that affect the American people is to use more of the government that created the problems in the first place. In the U.S., healthcare used to be extremely affordable, and then the government started subsidizing it. And whenever the government subsidizes anything, costs inherently raise and put things out of the reach of affordability of everyday citizens. So the fact that they're good at identifying and they're well-intentioned is good, but their solutions tend to be more problematic than anything else. So that's why I tend to not identify there either.
Gotcha. Nice. Thanks for your views on both the parties and the Libertarian Party and the reason why you're running for the Congress. So what is that? I've been reading about the Libertarian Party. As you also mentioned about, less government. And in recent times, with the Black Lives Matter. Okay, before I go to the point, let us talk about a little bit about the Black Lives Matter right now, and then we can go to the other point, because they align with your value. With your points. So how is the Black Lives Matter movement in the Houston area or the Texas area where you are from?
No, absolutely. So Black Lives Matter is the manifestation of a community who is tired of being abused by the government. When you have a system, a justice system that is based on profiling people because of what color their skin is, giving them different, harsher sentences based on what color their skin is, that's a sincere problem that the root of it is the government policy. Right now, the Black Lives Matter movement is really, it just reached a boiling point where you've just seen so many cases year after year here in the U.S. of police brutally harming, not the thing is, it's not just people of color. White people are being abused too, but the Black Lives Matter has done an amazing job at capturing that frustration and channeling it into a way that people can, exercise their First Amendment rights and protest against this. The Libertarian Party is really aligned with this movement in terms of the peaceful protest aspects, because we want to speak up. We want to say the government needs to stop hurting people. There's a bill that Congressman Justin Amash introduced last month or a few weeks ago called the Ending Qualified Immunity Act. What this would do is it would remove police officers' ability to avoid criminal charges when they commit criminal acts. So when you have law enforcement feeling like they're above the law, they're going to abuse it. What we want to do is level the playing field, hold people accountable for their actions like you would at any other job. This bill that he's introduced, it actually has support from several Democrats and a Republican. So we have tripartisan support on that, and that's something that I'd really encourage anyone else who is in Congress or the Senate to look at and start getting behind, because that is what it's going to take to solve the problem. That's also going to stop all of the protests and riots overnight. When the government says, "Okay, we acknowledge that there's a problem," just showing a willingness to solve it and making steps to do so, it will diffuse all of the anger and frustration.
Gotcha. I mean, that's a good point. I mean, with the equality and also the abolishing the qualified immunity to the police officers, and also the red flag, or the red flag laws is a different topic. We'll get to that one next. So, I mean, but don't you see that? I mean, the line, and also we have been hearing about the defunding the police department too. So, what do you say about the defunding movement? I mean, defunding the police department movement.
So I think that a lot of people, when they hear defunding, they get scared. They think, oh, then there's going to be no police, and who am I going to call, if there's any danger? What the movement really means is to reduce funding to just allow the police to perform the tasks that police should actually be doing. So this doesn't mean, stocking up on military equipment and tanks and all of these crazy weapons that they've been stockpiling just so they can have an excuse to use them whenever a crime happens. We don't need a militarized police force. We need a community ally who patrols the streets and makes sure that people are kept safe and their property safe. We don't need people. We don't need officers who are initiating conflicts with people who aren't doing anything to harm others. So defunding the police doesn't mean getting rid of the police department. It means removing their excess waste that they're using on, ridiculous things. Like there are so many neighborhoods in this country where the police have tanks. That's simply unacceptable, and that we need to push things in a different direction.
Gotcha. So that's one side of the story. The other side, I mean, when I was talking to a few mayors, in different cities, I mean, they're small towns. They have a shortage of funds to even employ the enough number of police people. So how do we address? I mean, the other one side. I mean, some cities are not able to hire enough number of police to respond to the calls they get, and the other
on. When you are having law enforcement spending time, harassing people for victimless acts, that's where you start to get out of control and require more people just to keep up with all of these bad rules.
Gotcha. It's a thanks for your views on this topic, which is hot right now in the market. I mean, in the situation right now. So do you think? I mean, we'll ever? I mean, it's been. I mean, many decades. I would say this kind of situations, incidents have been happening. So do you see a light? I mean, when someday these things will end? I mean, and we get the equal justice to everybody.
I think so. A lot of people care about this, and they've been demonstrating that by all of the marches that they've shown up to do. I really, I see. If I didn't see a light at the end of the tunnel, I wouldn't be running for office. There is good in this world, and there are people who believe in that. And when we work together to help enact change like that, there's nothing that can stop us. I really do think that right away, if governments around the country stood up and said, we support removing these special protections for police officers, we support holding them accountable, we will not rehire people who have committed attacks or killed people in other districts, because a lot of times someone will get fired and there'll be a big deal on the local news, and then they'll just move to the town, the next town over, and then they'll get their job back. So you really need to have the government reach out to people and say, we don't tolerate this anymore, and then and we're not going to put up with treating people in with inequality. We're not going to tear apart families by enforcing victimless crimes. We are not going to keep bad cops on the employee. Then you'll see the community appreciate that. They will know that they've been heard, and it fosters more harmony.
Gotcha. And your party is also saying that, I mean, you're less spending, less government, and more freedom to the people. These are all, I mean, sound very good. I mean, in the ideal world, I mean, when everybody is good and everybody is harmonious, and then it will work very well. But when you have different elements in the society, so I mean, without the checks and measures, I mean, it will be challenging to, I mean, control or manage the citizens or manage the country or a city or a state. So how do you manage with minimum government and then minimum spending? How is it possible?
Well, I think that just focusing on having a minimum set of rules is probably a good place to start with that. Right now in the United States, there's no one in the entire government who can tell you how many laws there are. So that, when you look at these legal tomes, I don't know, I don't know how law students do it, but there are so many laws that no one knows how many there are. I think we need to just hit a hard reset, start over, and just say what actually matters. What does the government actually need to enforce laws against? So whether that's laws against hurting other people, laws against hurting other people's property, laws against maybe false advertising or fraud, misrepresentation. When you get down to it, there's you mostly don't need laws other than things that harm, being against things that harm people. In our culture, we have a history of people saying, "I don't like that. There ought to be a law." And where their response should really be more like, I don't like that, so I won't do it. And it live and let live mentality will really allow governments to be a lot smaller, to cost a lot less, and to interfere a lot less with people's lives. So when we say we want less government, that doesn't mean we want people to be able to be free to go commit crimes, to go commit to harm other people. We want there to be a focus on the harm prevention and nothing else. Because when you try to criminalize peaceful acts, that creates more crime.
Gotcha. Thanks for your views again. And you briefly mentioned about what Dan Crenshaw is missing. So can you elaborate a little more about the current congressman? What is he missing? and what are you trying to achieve? Yeah, please.
Certainly. Actually, when Dan Crenshaw first started running for office, I was actually excited about him. I thought the guy was going to stand up. He said he ran on a campaign of representing the U.S. Constitution, of keeping the government small, keeping spending down, and really helping praise individuals. But as soon as he got into office, he starts talking about things like red flag laws, which again, those red flag laws allowed the government to take your guns even if there's been even if you haven't been charged of any crime, if there's no evidence against you, if you've never been convicted of anything, the government can just show up and take your guns. And that might not sound so crazy, except that that's one of our most important laws that we have in this country, is the respect for people's ability to be able to defend themselves, and with our Second Amendment. So that really disappointed me, which got him on my radar. And I decided to run because I realized that, at this time, I suppose about 9 months ago, I realized voters aren't going to have a chance to in this area to support someone who does care about their rights if no one challenges him. And I kept kind of keeping an eye on the race to see if someone else in the Libertarian Party would jump in. And when I didn't see it, I just went ahead and signed up. Now, as it turns out, 2 other people had that same thought the very same weekend as me when we filed. So I actually had to win a contested nomination within the Libertarian Party against 2 other people. Very great candidates, very great libertarians, but I did prevail, so that I could bring this message to people who have been disappointed by Dan Crenshaw. Like I said, I think he's a great guy. He's a really good speaker. He keeps getting it wrong when it comes to the important stuff. And if people don't stand up and hold these politicians accountable when they run on one thing and legislate on another, then they're just going to keep doing it, and it's going to keep letting the system get worse and worse. So I really just decided to run because I wanted to see some accountability in the system, and I wanted to make sure that the rights that we thought he was going to protect are represented.
Gotcha. I mean, very interesting point. I mean, the gun laws. I mean, the Second Amendment is very dear and important for many people in this country.
Doctor, and no one would think anything less of you. That would just be normal. So when you have people who are troubled and feel like the only thing that their only outlet is to just lash out and hurt other people, the gun happens to be their weapon of choice. Obviously, that is horrible, horrific, and should be completely opposed. However, you can't punish innocent people for what guilty people do. So if I'm a responsible gun owner, I shouldn't have any of my rights threatened because I've done nothing to hurt other people. We should only punish those who actually commit crimes. And that's something that I feel like our entire justice system is based on, but none of the lawmakers seem to be worried about that.
Gotcha. Okay. Thanks for your views on that topic too. And you brought in another point on healthcare. The top point. I mean, because of healthcare, I mean, you're seeing all these issues. But healthcare has become a very expensive affair. I mean, in the US right now. I mean, if you have to buy insurance, you need to have a job. Even if you have a job, you need to pay for your family from your pocket. Those kind of things, and which is not cheap. So what is your plan for the healthcare? I mean, you have that also one of the agenda items in your campaign. So,
Yes.
so what do you do? Yeah, you go ahead, please.
So this is one of those situations where, time and time again, economics, just basic economics, proves that anytime the government subsidizes something, it increases drastically in cost. So what I propose is having a healthcare system that is much more competitive, that allows different tiers reaching different market niches, so that different people of different income levels can afford it no matter what. During the World War II, the United States government actually, there was a shortage on workers. There was a shortage just because there were so many men who were off at war, that the government decided to impose pay caps, salary caps on the jobs that were here domestically, just so that they would not pull people away from the war effort. Well, what that did is it created the incentive for companies, and again, this is, what is it, 70 years ago at this point? It created the incentive for companies to offer other benefits that weren't pay. And at that point, that's how employers got completely wrapped up in providing insurance with your job. So now, when you go into a job, you ask, what is the compensation and what are the benefits? And that's just how the entire American employment landscape looked now. So we have this issue where the government tried to solve a problem, created another one, and now here we are, generations later, dealing with that. So in addition to that, healthcare costs started rising drastically once programs one generation ago started being introduced, where the government would guarantee to pay for certain cares. So anytime the government gets involved, the providers of those services are just going to up their rates because they know that the payment's coming no matter what. There's a less market-based competitive incentive for them to be lower priced because they're not worried about competing with each other. They're worried about distributed out. And there is no ability for any politician to know what people's needs are more so than their own. So when you remove people's ability to make decisions for themselves, and keep in mind, people are still going to be paying for this. They'll just be forced to pay whatever the government dictates the rate is, and also be forced to accept whatever the government offers. So when you take away people's ability to spend their own money wisely, you increase costs, you decrease access, and you increase the waiting times that people need just to seek basic care. You see this in a lot of places where free healthcare is offered, and I say free with the tongue in cheek because again, not free.
I think it's not free, unified healthcare or something. Okay.
Yeah.
Got it. Yeah.
So yeah, and the thing is, it's a good problem to identify. Healthcare should be something that is affordable, and it would be if the market were allowed to compete.
Gotcha. Thank you very much. And coming back to the health and healthcare, I mean, today is a hot topic. I mean, because of the last few months, I mean, everybody, whole world has been facing this pandemic. So how is this pandemic situation or a coronavirus spread in Texas and especially in the Houston area? And Texas, I think, announced the highest number of cases, single day cases in Texas yesterday, which is like around 5,000 cases, more than 5,000 cases.
Yeah, so Texas is a bit of a hotspot right now, unfortunately. And just from the perspective of the U.S. in general, the United States has almost 2.5 million cases of COVID so far. So this is not a small issue. This is a huge problem. And recently, a few weeks ago, the Texas governor decided to open things back up and allow people to, get back out there, interact, go to their favorite restaurants and bars. And that's why we're seeing this spike here again, because cause and effect. To be clear, I am completely against the government shutting down the state or the city or the country. I think that what the government's role in a pandemic like this is to educate the public as early as possible, help prioritize funding for emergency PPE, personal protective equipment, and make that available to citizens so that they can make safe decisions for themselves and their family. When you have the government telling you can't do this, there's an entire portion of the country who just says, yes, I can, and I will. And these are people who are defiantly not wearing masks because the government told them to. These are people who aren't practicing safe social distancing because the government told them to. So yes, that's a big problem, but I think that a softer touch would actually be more effective in this case. Informing people what the dangers are, allowing them to have better access to to the ways that they can hold themselves safe, and just letting them know that you are free to make whatever decisions you want. These are the consequences if you fail to be safe, if you fail to keep your family distant from those who might be infected. So education is the solution to this, not control.
I got you. Educating the people and bringing the awareness and the people about the disease and the virus and the consequences of that is going to help. That's what you're saying. So, I mean, during the COVID-19, pandemic time, many people are suggesting or saying healthcare is a big issue and also is also needed. And at the same time, we need to address the cost of it. So why don't we find a solution? Your solution you mentioned earlier is a free market will drive the costs down. But in spite of this pandemic, you still feel the free market will help reducing the price of the health insurance?
Yeah. So something that most people don't realize is that we have a global interdependent, market for items like healthcare materials. Right now, we have a president who is in the middle of a trade war with one of our biggest manufacturing trading partners. If you get that trade war nonsense out of the way, we could have sourced lots of these, necessary materials a lot earlier on and kept that curve of the virus spread a lot lower. So when you have government interference with free market, you disrupt the supply chains. And this is my career, this is my area of expertise. When you have disruptions of the supply chain, the market doesn't get to work as well. It creates an unnatural interference in it. So I know supply chain, this is what I do. what we need to do is allow free trade to work.
And I got the point from the supply chain point of view, which is nice. But at the same time, if you look at the hospitals, right, laying off their staff. I mean, let it be in Michigan or Texas, I'm sure. I mean, there are hospitals. I mean, that we are. I mean, are running under budget, and they are not able to meet the payroll. And so some of the non-essential resources they are laying off. So I mean, how is it? I mean, so when you're trying to cut, you want to cut down the costs of the insurance, and insurance is the one at the end of the day is going to pay the hospitals. So how are we going to manage? I mean, manage this inflow. I mean, the less inflow of the money and the raising cost of the operating hospitals.
So Houston is actually one of the largest medical centers in the entire country in the U.S. So I have a lot of close ties to people who work in the medical industry. Something that is a consistent theme with the medical industry is that with all of this subsidy, the increased costs have not been going to doctors. They've not been going to nurses. They've not been going to custodial staff. They've been going to administrators. And when you have this top-heavy model, it really creates a lot of instability when when demand fluctuates when there's something like this. Now, these hospitals are laying people off, and because they're not offering all of their normal services. So part of the government response is to limit hospitals to only respiratory and COVID-related treatment. All of the other services have been put on hold, and therefore all of the payments for those services have been put on hold. I know people who have had to put off surgeries that have been deemed elective when they're actually quality of life improvement, just because they've been told, sorry, we can't do that right now. That we need everyone dedicated to COVID who does specialize in that. So when you're not allowing hospitals to be open to treat non-pandemic related things, all of that income goes away, and therefore all of the employees are affected as well. But again, the rise in administrative spending in the healthcare industry absolutely continues to spiraling out of control. So that's an area I think that it would be wiser for the industry to have the freedom to set their own pricing competitively, not be overly reliant on insurance, and allow people to seek people don't need care from administrators; they need care from doctors and nurses. So that should be more emphasized.
Gotcha. Thanks for your views again on this. And one topic, I mean, being in Houston, and also you guys have experienced recently the Harvey still is on the memories of the people in the Houston area. So what do you think of the climate change? I mean, is it the climate change real, or is it man-made, or is it kind of is it is it a natural process, or what do you think? I mean, I'm sure you guys you have experience. I mean, I'm seeing a couple of natural, I would say, calamities, or in last few years. And recent one was the Harvey. I mean, a couple of years back.
Yeah, as a Houstonian, I absolutely Harvey hit hard. So just to answer the very biggest question you asked, there is climate change real? Absolutely, it is. This Earth is being affected in large part by a lot of the pollution that people and countries put out. So that's something that I'm just going to say without unapologetically, climate change does exist, and we should all be taking more responsible steps to take care of our home. That being said, Harvey specifically, I don't know necessarily how much climate change affected the creation of that. We had a disastrous hurricane hit the Texas Gulf Coast over 100 years ago when it almost wiped out Galveston completely, which is the closest city on the Gulf of Mexico to Houston. So it's hard to say whether or not climate change directly impacted Harvey. However, it was a very impactful event, and it was an example of the Houston community really coming together to help one another out. We had the city mayor, Turner of Houston, come on TV and say, we don't have the ability to help everyone. If you have a boat, help your neighbors. And we saw hundreds of private people, take their big lifted trucks out into flooded neighborhoods, take their boats out, their canoes, whatever they had, and save people and save their pets and their kids. And It was a really heartwarming time of unity here in Houston. So, getting back to the topic of climate change, though, right now what we have is a situation where the government sells these carbon credits, which are essentially a company paying the government for the ability to just pollute. And what does the government do with that money? I don't know. They throw it into their shredder or however government squanders their money. My approach to how pollution and climate change should be combated is to actually hold people and companies and countries liable for pollution that they create. So if you want to, if you want to pour sludge into a river or something, you should be financially liable for damages that cause people downriver and anyone that affects. And a lot of people say, well, sometimes the effects of pollution take a long time. How can you hold people accountable for that? So I think that using a combination of looking at past examples of how pollution has impacted to use, you can use data simulations to model how this goes out. You can hold people appropriately accountable. So the second part of that makes sense is don't just charge them fines and then feed that to the government. Take that money and distribute it to their victims to help with restitution for anyone who has been harmed. When you make when you make an act when you have a law that punishes an act, that punishment should be in some way have the ability to help the people who are hurt by that act, not just help pad the government's revenue. So I think that if you have a polluting company, you should hold them accountable and then treat it like a class action lawsuit for those in the affected area whenever they do pollute.
Okay. Thank you very much for the views, on the climate change and also how to handle the environmental issues when from a factory or an industry. So it's a good point. So you also mentioned about talking about, your party has been talking about ending the wars. So ending the war. Yeah. So there's another topic which has been there for almost now 19 years now. We have been we've been watching it. Let it be Afghanistan or Iraq and those kind of things. So what is your say on America being on war with other countries?
So actually, the United States military spending is over half of the government's discretionary spending budget allocation. America spends more than every other country combined by a factor, I believe an 8-fold factor of every other country in the world combined on their military spending. America spends 8 times more than that. That is crazy. What we have right now is a foreign policy of creating conflict, rescuing people from the fallout of the conflict we caused, creating people who destroying lives, creating people who want to retaliate against us for destroying those lives, and then declaring them to be the enemies of our country and as a justification to keep it going. Not only that, we are creating refugees in countries who we are also simultaneously turning away from our borders. So we're destroying their families, we're destroying their homes, and then when they seek asylum here in the U.S., we're saying no. And it's our foreign policy is an absolute disaster. It is generations and generations of starting conflict all over the world. The American government should not be doing that. If anything, our military should be used for national defense. That's it. We shouldn't be policing the world. We might offer aid strategically in different regions if requested, but that is, we absolutely should not have this perpetual war. Right now, we are squandering trillions of dollars of taxpayer money. We're ruining lives of not just the victims in these war-torn countries, but also we're ruining American lives when you have people who are being sent off to war and they come back both physically and psychologically damaged. That's the government is literally just wasting lives on both sides of the conflict and also charging us this exorbitant amount of money that could be spent on so much more productive in much more productive ways. Ending the wars is one of my really important issues that I rail against because it should reach across the aisle. And you should tell conservatives this is costing way too much money. it's costing way too many American lives. You can tell liberals or progressives that this is an immoral act. We can't have a system where both Republican and Democratic presidents authorize drone strikes on innocent civilians. Sometimes in the cases of up to 90% civilian fatality rates. That's completely unacceptable. That makes the American government the bad guy. So we really need to stop doing this. We need to focus more on international trade if we want to foster peace in the world, because you don't tend to get in armed conflicts when you're making money. So if we were to focus more on international trade, freeing up things, getting rid of tariffs, getting rid of restrictions to trade, and just allowing people to make money and benefit one another, that's going to solve a lot more conflict in this world than just bombing the heck out of everything.
Gotcha. I mean, your point is it looks like good, but I mean, at the same time, I mean, but how do you stop the
This is not a unique pattern in American history. We have a very long history of declaring someone else the enemy, giving them every reason in the world to not like us, and then acting like we're the victim when they want to lash out back. Now, that's not to say that Americans deserve to be attacked by terrorists. Absolutely not. What it means is we need to stop creating terrorists. We need to create trade partners and help everyone, benefit economically, which would, again, people who are making money don't pick up guns to go, fight a cause. They want to, people are just trying to make their lives better for themselves and their families. And that's a universal human trait, regardless of what country you live in. So we need to stop waging war if we want to stop encouraging terrorism.
And that's a good point. I mean, everybody, you want to improve the lives of the people. I mean, wherever they are, and that way they will focus on their own life. I mean, that's a good point. I mean, if they value their life, they don't get into this heinous acts and then trouble the other guy and get the trouble for themselves. So, which is a nice point. But I mean, how practical, we don't know. We will to see that. And hope, things will work out in the way you're saying. And let's
take a look at this. How many terrorist attacks occur in Switzerland? Everyone there
it's a neutral country. I mean, they have been neutral from both the wars, and then even today we don't know who is the prime minister of Switzerland. I mean, we know most of the other countries, heads of the countries, but the Switzerland is totally different political system. So which amazes. I mean, I happened to meet one gentleman from Switzerland in the airport, and he said even today they have a community. I mean, they raise hands to vote. I mean, for a specific issue. I mean, they have, I think, around 8 or 7 people. I mean, they anybody can represent the country in a given situation. One topic, this gentleman will represent the country. Another topic, another guy will represent the country. That's what I heard. I mean, a brief introduction from the other. That's a good example. But yeah, I mean, each country is different and their needs are different, and hopefully, everybody will be, whole world will be peaceful, as the other preachers have been saying in the world. I mean, everybody should be. When it comes to this one leads to another topic called equal. Everybody should be equal. I mean, when you're talking about, we need to treat the other people in the world, in a good way. So, let us. Surely, we'll try to address treating the people in the other countries equally or well. So, what is the situation of the treating our people in US equally first?
Well, just this last week, the US has had a landmark Supreme Court ruling that would allow people who are gender and sexual minorities to be considered covered under the Civil Rights Act. So, what that means is that before this week, an employer could just walk up to someone who might be, gay and say, I'm firing you because you're gay, and they don't have any legal recourse. Now that that protection's been extended to gender and sexual minorities, now they are treated just as, and that would be treated just as illegally if someone went up and said, I'm firing you because you are a Christian, or I'm firing you because you are black. And right now, those are considered protected classes where where people can't, if an employer or government agency or school discriminates against people on that basis, then they can be held liable for that. So what it means, though, is the concept of protected classes means that anyone who is a member of a minority group that is not a protected class, that means they're not afforded those same protections that everyone else enjoys. So when I talk about equality, I talk about everyone having the same treatment under the law. So a lot of people who maybe feel like they don't ever have to worry about that because maybe they're part of a majority group, it might be something that they don't ever think of or prioritize. But when you have people who are potentially losing their jobs, their homes, their access to healthcare, or even the ability to buy food or life-saving medicine, this is a life or death situation for a lot of people. So I have a lot of empathy for the causes of people who are in various minority groups, because it breaks my heart to see especially government policy that is being used against them for whatever political motive it may be. I tend to side with the people who are being wronged, or being hurt in a situation. So, prior to this Supreme Court ruling, one of my campaign issues was pushing for sexual orientation and gender identity to be added as protected classes under the EEOC. But it sounds like the Supreme Court's done a little bit of my work for me.
Gotcha. Thank you very much. So do you have any message to the people, from your side and from your campaign? You want to say something to the audience, please?
Absolutely. If you'd like to check out more about my campaign or learn more about the Libertarian Party in general, you can find my information at ShermanForCongress.com. That's SCHEIRMAN, and then for spelled out FOR, Congress, CONGRESS.com. You can also follow me on social media. I'm on Facebook. I've got a very large following at my page there, Sherman for Congress. You can follow me on Twitter at Vote Sherman, and again, that's SCHEIRMAN. I could use a few more followers there if you'd like to help out. At Sherman for Congress. I really appreciate you having me today. So thank you for giving me a chance to talk about some issues that are important and that affect